I am alive, apparently. Oh my goodness, what is that? Oh, it was one person. But let's see. Well, I had one person. I had one person with me for like a split second. Oh, honestly, I haven't done anything that was like streaming like in so long. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of the old Tiny Chat days. Let's see, what else can I do with this? What can I edit? I can do a description, live chat. Allow live chat to reply? I don't know. Not sure what this actually. Oh my god, there's one other person. Ah! Hello. How do you do? I'm just trying to understand how this all works. Let's see. I cannot do that. Oh no, they're gone. Ah. I had 3 people, well, including myself. Let's see. Edit. Doing my first YouTube. I can't spell YouTube. YouTube stream. To see what do this. Just for fun, because that's pretty much what it's going to be. For how little people are going to schedule. Select the date you want to start streaming. I already started streaming for a little bit. Entertainment. Hoosk. That's a stream. You know what? There we go. Damn it. Done. Recording date today. I may as well. Save. Oh my god, there's another person. Yes. Hello. Oh my god, I got a like. That's nice. Someone say something goofy. Oh my god, I got 2 likes. Ask me questions. Oh my god. Oh, there's 2 people now. And my table is shaking because I cannot contain the excitement of the Hoosk. I'm just being silly. I'm checking. Someone is sharing me art. How do I share? How do I share? Uh-oh. What the hell? Oh, okay. Oh my goodness, I got 3 people. Let me see. Okay, yeah, all right, I can do this. Okay. Forgive me, I am incredibly clueless Hoosk. I lost 2 people. There we go. Yeah, I am absolutely new to. Oh my god, that's a Hoosk! I'm gonna retweet a picture of a Hoosk. Hello. Can anyone hear me? Oh my god, they're dabbing! And it's got sheebs! Hello. Oh my god, I had 4 people here. So, back in the day, 7 to 8 years ago, for those who are currently listening right now, which is 2 other people, so awesome. There used to be a website, or actually it's still, I believe there, is called Tiny Chat. It's kind of like before Omegle. And what I used to do a lot is to do a Tiny Chat with anywhere from 1 other person to 10 people. And the more and more people you had on your Tiny Chat link, the more leg you got. But I think the most I've ever had was, I think, 12 people. And, what I do is I just tend to, take my suit out of my bin, brush it and whatnot. And I would do that for hours, talk to people. And it's like a video, it's like a video and audio interface with, I guess you call it a stream. Where else here, you're just hearing and seeing me, which seems fun, but would like more interaction from that. I don't know. It'd be something different to do. What does this do? It's little dots. Hello, Lone Wolf. How are you? So, I just popped my finger. I have never done that before. Oh, I mean, I've popped my fingers, but never in this way where I just tend to, I kind of pop my, it's a bad habit, but well, it's good to hear, Lone Wolf. What you been up to? Also, happy Thanksgiving or happy belated Thanksgiving. Hopefully you are full of turkey or something. I don't know. Food in your face. Yeah, I haven't really been doing much at all, except for uploading videos to YouTube for my scheduling on Mondays, Fridays. And I've discovered there's one video that I've edited where I've been getting a bit more experimental with how I do the intros to my video, as far as like the title of videos. And there's one of them that just says title. And that's being aired next February, and I'm lazy to the idea of, do I want to fix that and have the actual title of the video on the bottom like I have been doing, which this is for future videos, so you won't really see this till maybe December. Meow. Meow. Oh, it's the Tiggs. Hello, Tiggs. Mr. Pants 100. That sounds like a de-pantsing machine where all the high schoolers would use. I don't know. I've been pantsed once in high school, and it was funny because it was unsuccessful. Because unlike all the other people in my class, I was the only nerd that tightened his drawstrings. And boy, was it awkward when they tried to pants me in a swim unit. I was successful. My pants stayed on. Oh, cool. Congrats on 1,000 followers. It's been a long time. Actually, Mr. Pants just sounds like a really interesting backstory of how that name came about. It just seems interesting, but next milestone is 2K. 2021. Let's see if you can actually get an extra 1,000 on that within the next year. Hello, Johnson. Did you just turn 31? Happy birthday. But back to what I was, because so far today I've just been uploading already preset videos I just have to upload onto my account because I want to get enough backlog so I don't have to do squat as far as making videos, because these are all literally ideas, except for that's password. That's for a video. That's a password. That's part of another video. And I just remembered I forgot something about that one. So I can't, that's the only video that I have set to go in the raw without editing. And I have to make another flashcard on dual circuit breaks, which I totally forgot one aspect of that. But these are all ideas of videos that I have and can do in time. That's a pretty good scheduling interval live streaming. I've never done a live stream on YouTube before. I've always done Tiny Chat back in the day, and that was random. Where streaming on YouTube, probably going to be random with me anyway. I really don't know. Last year around this time when I got back onto this channel, this is my very first stream ever. Like, I've never done a stream before because I am usually busy, but now with pandemic, I am reestablishing time for myself, which is actually kind of a nice blessing in disguise where I have time to myself for once. Back in the day when the fandom was smaller, there was not much to do anyway locally, so you just kind of hung out online, did Tiny Chat, hang out with your friends, brush fursuit for 1 or 2 hours, and kind of, have fun talking with other people. This is just weird for me in the sense that I can't hear you guys specifically, can't see you guys specifically. It's just me talking to my computer and my wall right in front of me. How it usually is when I make videos is I'm literally talking to my phone, propped up against my external hard drive. There we go. It's not even a stand. It's just literally leaning against something. I actually can't wait for cons to come back. Although I would hope that they come back at some point. I really don't know. So with cons, from what my understanding is on running big events, I've never ran a con, but I have helped run major reenacting events, which in some cases is like a convention, but really not. It's not furry in nature by any stretch. But in nature, it's somewhat similar, but you've got a huge insurance policy because, oh my God, you need insurance for that kind of shit. And I've asked some furries that would run conventions, and I always ask them, do you have insurance? Because you're going to need it. Where in the reenacting world, it's cheaper to insure a Sherman tank than it is to insure someone with a flamethrower. It's crazy and stupid like that, but there's contractual obligations with some cons where they have to say, hey, we're coming back 2021, but it's not for certain if they will follow through on that. Reenacting wise, there's not so much a hotel, but it's park districts, and they also need revenue from us. So kind of like a hotel, but we're actually going through park services. And I guess between reenacting and fur cons, the contracts are a little bit different where, stuff like this just tends to kind of screw things up. I would love to go to Anthrocon someday. I don't know when. Would love to go at least once just to say I've been there. I've had more dreams going to Anthrocon than any other convention, and I've never even set foot in. Oh no, I've been to Pennsylvania once, and that was 1998, and that was to pick up an opal. That's it. That's the only time I've ever been to Pennsylvania, was more than 20 years ago. That's actually cool, Lone Wolf. Reenacting is a really fun hobby. It's expensive. It's much like furry. If you're wearing a wool uniform, it's much like wearing a fursuit. You're going to be warm all day. So when I finally got my fursuit, I've been already reenacting 8 years at that point. So really, I was already accustomed to the heat anyway. It's just steel helmet and wool. It's a lot of heat, and our company commander, Ernst Humes, also known as Rich, the glorious Rich, that is kind of the Uncle Kage of the reenacting fandom or community, and he would, on purpose, make us stand in a field 90 degrees with 95% humidity as we sweat our balls off and our faces off, while he holy cow, that ballast just kicked on. Can I maybe? I don't know. Now I have some kind of halo effect with my hair. But yeah, I miss reenacting much like I miss fur cons. It's just one good reason to get out of the house, see old friends and whatnot. But with reenacting world, I've gone up in it in the last actually 4 years. Since my dad left the reenacting community, they discovered me. And they said, oh, you're Joey's son. So the myth is true because they didn't think I actually was reenacting at the time. So they have found me. And every single Tom, Dick, and Harry wants me in their unit because I know my shit too well. But yeah, when cons come back, of course, first squared because I'm 10 minutes down the road. It's always been a local joke that I'm always the first one there. I sometimes would show up in December, take a picture, and share all my friends and say, "Hey, where the hell are you guys? Oh shit, I'm months early." But that IFC or Indy Fur Con is a fun con. Would love to come back to that. First con really far away from home. Driving away by myself is like the most liberating thing that I've ever experienced. In a car that falls apart along the way. So there is the excitement of, are you going to get there? And once you're there, are you going to make it back home? The biggest amount of excitement I have ever had was going to IFC 2013, not knowing if I was going to make it there and if I was going to make it back home, which I did. But Anthro Ohio was fun. For Reality was my it's my first small con in a long time that I've attended that reminds me of MFF back in the day when it was 2,200 people, or IFC when it was about 500 people. For Reality is a very small con. And if it's one thing that I appreciated about that is its size. It's small, kind of dead, but it was a lot of fun. For Reality would be one of those cons I wouldn't mind trying one day just to, hey, I don't know, I really don't know how big furry migration is, but it seems small enough to where it would probably bring back good memories of cons when they were much smaller. I love big cons, but eventually they become a pain in the ass to get a hotel room for. And after my failed attempts of getting a hotel room for MFF, I've stopped competing with people trying to get a hotel room for, and I've got bad experiences with roommates in the past. I'd rather have the room in my name because I would know I'm going to make it unless I am dead. Or world events would probably stop me from going to a con. Otherwise, I always make it to a con. It's the people who I'm rooming with, I tend to have pretty good luck. It's the very few that surprise me that literally kind of stab me in the back. So I have, a small list of people that are on a list who room with me that try to get on that list because they know I am the most reliable person to get a room with. MFF is just one of those cons where I can't do a weekend, obviously because my job won't allow me to take time off in December, but it's hard to get a hotel room for. So smaller cons I'd rather go to in the future just because rooms are going to be much more cheaper. Rooms are going to be a bit more available. I'm not going to compete against other people trying to get a hotel room for. I mean, I would not mind rooming. Actually, yeah, with Tiggs, if you can get room space with a Hoosk in it for MFF, all right, then you've pretty much sold me on that. It's just got to be with people who are probably going to be the most reliable. Because if they don't inspire confidence to me, because boy, have I been screwed by people in the past going to a con, getting there and then realize they aren't going to be there. And I was totally roomless, and I literally had to ask people, hey, can I crash? And there's nothing worse about asking other friends for crashing space. It's the worst feeling to ever do because that it's kind of sad. Yeah, MFF is one con I always enjoy because it's my first con back in 2010, which would be 10 years going to cons for me. And it's different. So MFF is an incredibly fun con, but if it's going to be your first, it's overwhelming. Back in 2010, still the third biggest con in the world after Anthrocon and Further Confusion. Yeah, it was Further Confusion is always the second one. And 2010, people have told me personally, why don't you go to a smaller con? You don't feel as overwhelmed if you were to go to a smaller con, which would have been cons that were, 200, 300 people, which there were none around. It was just MFF. There was no other choice. You had MFF. That's it. So I went with my dad. I explained him about the furry fandom. And since we were both reenactors, he totally took that incredibly well. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. So it's pretty much like us, except you're wearing a fursuit. And he was on board with that. Actually, he enjoyed his weekend with me at MFF 2010. So, and I was 17 at the time, so he had to come along with me. And you know what? He had a blast too. So, kind of cool. You have to find things to make you happy, especially during tough times like this. Definitely spending time with friends, spending time with loved ones, family, friends, what things that make you happy will definitely get you through tough times like it is right now. The fandom documentary by Ash Coyote surprised me. Being in this fandom since 2002, really been a lurker until really 2007. And that's kind of when I started getting more active into it and whatnot. But I have been around 2002. So there's a lot of things from that documentary from the beginning, because there's a lot of spillover from the late 90s into the early 2000s that I remember. And it was just like, yeah, it kind of reminds me of then. It's nice to hear some familiar names, but it's also strange to hear names I've never heard of, which is cool. It's good to learn something new. Yeah, I'm not the brain owl knowing in this community. I only know what I've experienced. But, and I tell people, you learn as you go along in this fandom. It's much like a reenacting. You're not going to learn a lot until you get through it, or unless you're me and my dad. She's been in the reenacting hobby since 1982, so I had the upper edge on a lot of people in the reenacting community to know as much as he did early on, which, in my shoes, people come accosting me on information that my dad knew that they can't get a hold of anymore. Really, all in the time that you put into a community, you will learn as well. And you don't need to learn anything to join it, which is the beauty of all communities, is you can come in, you can come into any community not knowing a single thing about it, and you can still come out walking out with knowledge that you did not know before. And the fandom was a good reminder of stuff that I remembered in the past, and then learning totally new things that I did not even know, which is great because as someone who appreciates history, I was an unofficial assistant for my history class at UWM, where literally I was impressing the UWM history department. They wanted me as an unofficial advisor in their team. Literally, I had the history department coming after me saying in an email, or in a letter which I actually have hanging around somewhere here because it's just a proud moment that I've been recognized. That it's fun to teach history. It's fun to teach others, and then there's that moment where you can sit back and learn about something new. And I'm really looking forward to the next episode or the next installment of the fandom. However, if they have not recorded anything for the second episode, it may be a long while until they will have a second episode out, at least at a convention where it's easier for them to record interviews at, unless they go out of their way right now or do it online. I don't know how the second installment of the fandom documentary will go, but I have high hopes that it will still happen. There's just some hurdles right now that have to be gone through, unless they do it over online, but it loses a bit of the aspect of doing it in person, recording at conventions. There's a certain aura behind the first documentary that was just absolutely fantastic. And plus two, just something about the environment of a convention is just wholesome. Kind of feels like you're at home while being far away from home. TFF would seem like a pretty fun con to go, but I'd rather stick around with wholesome. Oh, that's funny. I'd rather stick around regional conventions. I would love to do other cons across the country, across the world, but I'd rather stay close to home without going too far away. As if anything, going to these faraway cons, I know for a fact that these are going to be maybe a once or twice deal before I don't do them again. Really, my focus is regional cons because I've met a lot of people throughout time here, and I have not stepped foot in the Minnesota furry community. I have been in a lot of regional furry communities, except for Minnesota. That's the only one that's escaped the Hoosk influence. But a rainbow husky, watermelon, that sounds adorable. You should certainly love where you live, especially the community that you're in. You should always appreciate what you got. Or if there's nothing there for your community, you can become a pioneer like I did and start something. Really, when I became active in Wisconsin, I was like the only one actually pulling strings for the longest time, which a lot of people think that others did, which, I'm not going to say they didn't, but I was the first one that actually did something and actually put a structure in place to make it happen. That's part of another mini series about me at some point into the long distant future, which I don't even know when I'll ever get to that. Pretty much local Wisconsin history for furries in a nutshell. Few locals know, and I know way too much, but it'd be fun to share the knowledge when I get to that point. But right now, I would rather do something about film photography because that's something I enjoy a lot. And I think it'd be fun to share that knowledge too, because I do panels about that and get the most enjoyment out of panels. Hello, Tuesday. How are you? Plan to visit New York City sometimes. I would love to visit New York City. That'd be fun to visit major U.S. cities the only big major city I've been in this country is Chicago. I mean, I've been to other major cities in other parts of the world, most likely Europe. Well, only in Europe because that's all I've ever been in is Europe. I'm glad you're doing well. Yeah, I've had a good Thanksgiving, and my night is pretty peachy so far. I am ecstatic that I got 5 furries on here right now. That's more than I ever thought. I was going to talk for. Actually, what would I talk about by myself for an hour? I don't know. Probably talk about something weird like I normally do for my videos because, yeah, it's just far out there. Or start doing a live stream on one of my video ideas, which would cut down on a lot of the backlog time that some of these videos that I've recorded back in October is being finally played in November and December, and all the stuff that I did in November is going to be December, January, and a bit of February. And lately, the last stuff I recorded in November is for February and March. It's stupid, but it's funny at the same time that I don't have to do squats so much. But yeah, my Thanksgiving was very groovy because we did 70s themed. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Tuesday, yeah. If I have something to talk about, then I'm doing pretty good. But if I don't have anything to talk about, I'm just going to improvise. Just get really, really weird with it. Glitch. I think I've heard of someone named Glitch. I don't know much about them. I don't know exactly who they are, but I have heard of them. But oh my god, I got another like. But it's just what this pandemic has done is it's turned back the time for me back 7-8 years ago in this community where I only went to one convention a year. That was MFF. I was not convinced until the winter of 2012 or the summer of 2013 to go to another convention. I had other friends that said, you know what, it's bullshit that we can only see you once a year. You know what? Come to IFC. It's like, but I have to find, a room to stay at. I'm like, oh, just room with us. And like, yeah. And then I did. And again, really, really fun time. My long-time friends, Quiet, Wild, and Aki, Sparkle Cat, really close friends to this very day. One of the oldest groups of friends I know in this fandom, and they've been wholesome. I had the awesome opportunity to actually visit them at their home and to meet their little one, Ariel, for the very, very first time in person. They're starting a family, a furry family. And they said that they probably won't be doing cons for a while. And with pandemic going on, they say, yeah, we're not going to miss out on too much because there's nothing to do. So I guess raising a family right now will definitely kill the time until fur cons come back. So I guess this may have been their blessing in disguise, but to visit them again, to see them in person and see their family is something truly wholesome that I feel quite blessed to be in the presence of. Like after this pandemic goes away, there's going to be some people I would like to hang out with that I have not seen in a while, just to get out there, say hello, spend a weekend, and just kind of hang out. Some old time friends. I'm talking about friendships of 8, 10, 14 years in this fandom would be fun just to hang out with them. Like a red blood moon. Doesn't happen too often, but when we do, it's always fun. But a pandemic is really starting to make me consider that. Well, definitely thankful for the friends, the people I have met in life in this fandom. Grateful for that. Quite blessed for it. But then I also started thinking, when was the last time I actually hung out with them? And it's like been 4 or 5 years. So yeah, this pandemic is actually certainly this fandom's been amazing. That for all the friends that I've had in high school, I don't really talk to much of any of them. In fact, I don't talk to any of them at all. It's kind of sad, but the more that I met people, made friends in this fandom. Major winter storm to bring a foot of heavy snow to the Great Lakes. Holy cow, that's me. Lake effect. But then again, we don't get much lake effect in Milwaukee. It's mostly across the lake that gets lake effect, but I did not know that. But it is nice to catch up with old friends in this fandom because they've seen you grow within the fandom and you see them grow in the fandom, and it's fun to see age. Bring on the snow. Oh my god. I mean, it did snow slightly. Not much. We didn't get much actual snow on the ground, but it did snow last week. But it's here. It's found us. But at least it wasn't the year before where it snowed on Halloween. So I'm at least glad that it snowed appropriately a week before December. That seems appropriate around here. I'm fine with that. Let's see. What are some big name furries that I have met? I've definitely met November. I met him in person and in suit at a Laugh bowling meet back in, was that 2014? And Duke the dancing dog, I met him at another Laugh bowl meet around that same time too. They were just happened. Oh no, it was 2013. It was 2013 or 2014 when MFF used to be in November. I remember a day when MFF, it was in the month of November, not December. Showing my age. When you go to a convention when it was in a month that it no longer is anymore. And he happened to be in the area visiting because he's from Australia. He was in Australia at that time, but in the United States for MFF to, of course, visit with locals, and then showed up to a Laugh bowl meet because this is about a week after MFF, and hung out. Tycho Shep is I would say he's a good name in Chicago, a name to kind of reckon with, although he's more down to earth. I've seen Tyser, but I never really hung out with him. I have hung out with Duke Doberman. He's pretty cool. He's got an amazing suit. I mean, of course, there's Uncle Kage. got Alkali. You've got Xander. Pretty precious beings. Lace or Rowan. I've met Tani DeReal a few times. I'm rattling brain for more names that might ring a bell. I've definitely met a lot of artists. Yeah, exactly. Really, the last time I focused on popular people in this fandom was maybe like 8, 10 years ago. And at that point, I just kind of like stopped. And the people who were popular back then aren't relevant today. And unfortunately, which who knows, maybe with Twitter and YouTube, that popular furries might stay more relevant over a long period of time, but that's not going to stop the next generation from coming in to take their place. That's just only natural. You get your 15 minutes, which in this case, you might get your 15 months of fame. Then you start to go down the list of relevancy, and then eventually you're still a notable furry, but you're not as on the top of the list as you may have been. It's like Telegraph. Telegram? Telegraph. The fursuiter, the Angel Dragon. I met her or them. I'm just gonna say them. At IFC 2013 or 2014. And Telephone, yes, Telephone. And she was quite popular for many years. Nowadays, you don't hear much from them, which is not a bad thing. She's still known. People still talk about them, but no longer to the degree that they were when they were fresh in the minds of people. Now, they're a very successful fursuit maker, even almost to the point of that they don't use Telephone in suit as much. They have other suits. And I think they're also getting a new breath of fresh air to do something different for a change, which is always a nice thing. But yeah, there was a time when Telephone was incredibly relevant, and not to say that in a bad way, but she's not as relevant as they used to be. And that's okay. It's just all about growing old and growing with the fandom. And I see that a lot of furs that were relevant and no longer relevant, they also tend to mellow as time goes on. Then they become more down to earth and whatnot. So, because, yeah, and pretty much you're right, Lone Wolf. Things come and go, and it's only normal for that to happen. Let's take a look at and my laptop is screaming at me. I do not know why. But let's see. Oh God. Majura seems like a really cool fur. I think really the main relevancy of a lot of modern popular furries is YouTube, and that's okay. I mean, it is possible that it is getting hot. It's only 75 degrees here, and I'm in the basement, and it's normally never this warm unless I put on a space heater, which in this time of year, it's nice. But the Jura seems like a really cool fur. I've seen him in person. I've been close to him, but I don't know much about him beyond that. So I've got a good positive view about him. I just don't know much about him. Like with a lot of popu furs, when someone tells me, "Oh, have you heard of this person?" and I always say, "The who?" It's just something that I don't tend to notice. I just kind of do my own thing. I do my own thing. I zoom, I swirl, and then I zoom again, and then do more swirl. So far, I have 380 subs on your channel, on the road to get 400. You know what? I wish you luck with that. I am at 1,880 subscribers and would like to get to 2,000 by next year if I can. That'd be my little victory in the upcoming future. Speaking of YouTube and filming, I gotta ask you, how did you get into film stuff? Well, oh, it's the Ben Gordy. Oh, hello. Oh. No curl with the zoom and swirl. Oh. So how I got into film photography. Well, really, it started off with my French uncle's Nikon camera. It's a point and shoot from the late 80s, early 90s. It's like a it's like a ZWT zoom lens camera. I forget the exact model of it, but when he had passed on in 2003, that eventually became my very first camera, although I had other first cameras. I've got a green express shot Polaroid camera from 98. That was my very first camera I've ever gotten. And I used that until 2002, and then I had somehow lost it, which turned out to be a desk drawer, which sat for 18 years until I found it over a year ago. And found my Polaroid camera, and I'm taking Polaroid pictures, which Ben Gordy's been asking me for a long time. I want to take a look at your Polaroid camera, which I never could find it until recently, and then I showed him recently, which, yeah, Polaroid. But with that Nikon point and shoot, that was my very first 35 millimeter camera, and that was my camera. That was my camera I took pictures with. Early 2000s, film was still relevant, though digital was really, really biting and grabbing onto the market, which more and more people saw that being the future of photography. And really, I didn't really get into digital photography until, personally, till 2009, but I didn't own a digital camera. I did not own my first digital camera until, say, 2012. So I didn't pay for my first point and shoot digital camera until I had my Sony CyberShot, which bit the dust in a sand dune when granules got into the telescoping zoom lens and totally baked it. Like, just grinded inside, got stuck halfway, and at that point, cactus. Couldn't do anything about it. And then I bought another Sony CyberShot point and shoot in 2014, and didn't really use it all that much because then I bought myself my first DSLR. I've had other film cameras, which in my film photography mini-series, which I hope to do some work on this weekend, I've had other film cameras. I own a lot of Yashica, a lot of other weird cameras that kind of sit around for a while, then I use for a long time, and then I put them away for another camera. So it's much like a classic car collection. You take one car, you drive it around for a few months, then you go for the next one. Me, it's just the same with cameras. I'm interested in using a camera for several months, then I put it back and I grab the next one. Which having a ton of classic cameras is fun, but that's kind of how I got into film photography. Is I was a leftover from the time of film photography. I can't say I stopped, so I can't be called a hipster for liking film photography, because you know what? I didn't really stop. It definitely dwindled down the more I started using my dad's digital camera in 2009, but I still had my uncle's Nikon point-and-shoot camera. So to say, did I ever stop with film? Not really. I started to use it less and less, but I still used film. And then when I got out of high school, I bought my first digital camera, but then I also wanted to still continue putting one foot in the modern world and one foot in the analog world. So I bought my first major film camera, a Yashica SE Quartz from 1984. That was my very first SLR camera with a 40 to 84 millimeter lens, which was a really nice camera. Bought that from Goodwill for $25. Turned out the lens itself was worth $55, so, I did all right with that. A bit of the foam is gone in one spot, so it does do a little bit of light leaks, but I've been talking about wanting to replace the foam on my film cameras to reduce light leaks, just to get as much out of my cameras. But it's like owning a beater car. You say you're going to change out the tires, change out the oil, and you never do, because after a while you stopped caring. But then the issues of, oh yeah, my car burns oil, I should do something about that, and you never do. Yeah, a good number of my cameras have some form of a light leak. Yeah, I see it in the film, but it's also kind of different and cool. Do I do anything about it? Not really. But yeah, and I do have some 120 millimeter cameras. I only have one. I would like to get a TLR camera at some point. That's my next camera over the horizon. They're expensive. That's for future video when I do TLRs. So who knows, next year I may end up picking up a TLR just to say I have one. I have a ton of 35 millimeter cameras. I've got just dozens of them. Different cameras from different time periods. I've got cameras from the 19-teens to the 90s. So I've got a camera from at least every decade. I can at least say that. So that's kind of cool. A lot of them from the 80s, a lot of them from the 70s, few from the 60s, 50s, and 40s. Mostly 70s, 80s period. I did pick up an APS camera this past week, which is Advanced Photo System. I forget. But I did pick out an APS camera that I got for $2 at a Goodwill. So kind of excited just to buy some expired APS film just to say, I took some picture in APS film. I have some 126 millimeter cameras that you can't get new film for, but would like to get some expired 126 film just to simply say, hey, at least I took pictures in this format just to say I did. Yeah, you probably could because this looks like a really fun APS camera. I think it's another Sony camera. I forget. It's in the other room, but too lazy to get it right now. Now I have another episode for the film photography series about APS film that I can talk about. So now that's one other aspect of film photography I can talk about. Let's see. Yeah, I do have a rough draft as far as my film photography panel at FurCons. It's going to be roughly based on that, but it's going to be drawn a bit more on each subject. So the history of film, how film gets developed, and the different formats of film. Or not just the different formats of film, but also the different types of cameras with film. I could go in a lot of directions with this. So instead of an hour-long condensed FurCon panel about film photography, this mini-series is really going to be about like a 30-minute video of specifically what a subject is going to be about, which I don't know if I got it written down somewhere. I don't know. It's could be in my idea of notes, which I have a huge stack of. And about fursuit makers. There's so many fursuit makers out there. There's so many of them. Any one of them would be fun to go with. That's not it. It's about General Motors and car shows. No. Apparently, I would have to make a list, but since I'm going to be making videos, hopefully making videos, I still have to make some scripts for this upcoming weekend. Really? I mean, I wanted to get a one-for-all suit, but then they told me that my idea or my persona was too plain, so they rejected me based on that alone. So, okay. But one-for-all suits look really nice. I think they're pretty handsome looking. Firestorm's 6 suits are moolah dollar, but also they're more like the Maybach. If you're thinking about Mercedes-Benz, it's like Darth Vader and there's someone above him. Like Mercedes-Benz, there's Maybach. I don't know what is the highest quality fursuit maker on the planet. However, Firestorm 6 makes exquisite fursuits. And it's pretty much based on whether if the person, Firestorm, will take a commission or not based on your persona. But the suits are incredible. They take a few years to get to, although it's not as bad as One for All, which they have a 3-year waiting period, which is dumb. Most fursuit makers, could call them manufacturers at that point, they will have a 1 to 3 year waiting period anyway, unless you go with a new startup fursuit maker, which just got themselves known. You might be able to get your suit within the year, which is rare. And some major fursuit makers are so efficient that even regardless of how many they take in a year, they can still get things done quite efficiently, and you might still wait only a year or less for a fursuit. So with newer fursuit makers, they're still a bit unknown. They are known enough, but they don't have a suit that makes them pop, that actually makes them at the forefront of, oh, hey, this suit's amazing. What's the maker? And then they get business at the wazoo. It's much like Made for You or Firestorm 6, One for All, Menagerie Works, even my own fursuit maker, Fur Zombie Studios. Oh, I think Rusty has decided to rename her fursuit making business to something else. I'm not sure exactly which. Should look into that. But if there is a list of fursuit makers out there, whether it's on Telegram or on Twitter, please send me a link of all the manufacturers of fursuits. Because back in the day, you didn't have many fursuit makers because a fursuit was like an East German Trabant. You knew very, very few people who had a fursuit back in the day, and a lot of people didn't think they could afford one, but in reality, you could. It's just no one was very upfront about it, and very, very few people still got a commission thinking that, you know, you have to be some furry god to receive one, which nowadays anyone can get one if you can scrap up, well, not really the pennies or pounds to get a fursuit, but if you can get a bank loan, even a bank loan, although it's a very interesting question to ask your bank, normally you're better off saving, but yeah. So as long as you can afford the fursuit outright, then you're in better luck, because then the faster you pay off your suit in line, the more likely you are going to get your fursuit a lot faster. And it all depends on who you go for, because and since my very first fursuit prices have gone up over the last 10 years. What I thought was expensive back 10 years ago is affordable today. And of course, demand is really, it's what I like to call the fursuit pricing bubble. That bubble has yet to pop, and likely never will. But now, people on average are paying anywhere from $2,500 to $4,000 on a fursuit. Back 10 years ago, it used to be $1,500 to $2,500. And we like to tell people you're really spending your money if you paid $3,000 and for 10-year ago quality. And people were pretty amazed about that. Now, $3,000 is the average asking cost for many suits. Sometimes fursuit manufacturers, okay, I'm going to call them fursuit manufacturers at this point. If they're big enough, they already have fursuit head molds to make the stuff right out the bat. Yes, exactly, Taco. The U.S. economy will collapse before the fursuit market bubble pops, because the demand for fursuits are always going to keep going and going and going and going. It's always going to climb up until they start costing 10 grand, which I think is an absurd amount of money, which at that point, it's highway robbery. At that point, it would be better off making your own fursuit at 10 grand. Right now, they're still affordable. If you are committed and motivated enough, you can save up to 2 to 4 grand on a fursuit if you are really motivated to get the money to the quote that your fursuit maker that you choose is offering. But just because a fursuit maker gives you a quote doesn't mean you're on their queue. Some fursuit makers rarely ever open up their queue because they're so backlogged and so busy. They're already making money kind of as it is. They may take 1 or 2 at a time. But some fursuit makers are that efficient that they will take a queue of anywhere from 2 to 10 people at a go, almost kind of like a bidding process, and you can get your name on that list. Some fursuit makers tend to take 20 people in one go, a good enough chance to get into a queue for a fursuit maker, but it will definitely take them anywhere from 12 to 18 months before they finally get to you, or literally depends on how you pay. If you pay upfront immediately, you're going to get higher on that recent list compared to someone who does maybe a 30% down payment just to get on the list. And then you keep paying monthly, or how much money you need depending on fursuit maker, what they demand you pay. If you pay upfront immediately, you're going to be on their recent list and higher up. That means you're going to be getting your suit a little bit more sooner when they get to you. Actually, fursuit, yeah, fursuit's kind of nice. I don't actually have one, but one day would be fun. But what's actually funny is a lot of people have thought both my fursuits are mersuits, and I'd surprise a lot of people and say, look at the crotch, no zipper. And then I take a picture and like, no way. Yeah, way. And, people just think, wait, Dustin's not a mersuiter? No, never was. At least with those suits. I would not mind. I'm a pretty creative, crafty person. I've worked on cars, done work here and there, doing different things. So I like working with my hands. I like to think I am talented in the way of learning something and doing something just to see how it works. I'm not this, I guess I can call myself an idiot savant, but I know my limits to certain things. But I like to get creative in ways that, okay, what can I do to make things more interesting as a side project? Where in this case, a film photography miniseries is my current side project that would be fun, a bit challenging, just to say I did it. Enjoy the process of doing said project and then seeing it to completion. I think I would love to make my own fursuit just to say I can, just to know. I'll give you idiot savants, idiots. That's good. But I like to think that I could at least make my own fursuit, and either doing it in a way that Semj has made their fursuit head molds, which is something I've been looking into, is just making a clay mold of your fursuit head design, making a negative mold, to which then you can use for a positive mold of liquid pourable foam, much like every single major fursuit maker. Some go through the trouble of creating each head as unique, but then you also have some that go for the cookie cutter GM, General Motors platform approach that, yes, you have a J body. That's meant for the Cavalier, Sunbird, Skyhawk, Cimarron, and Firenze. It's literally the same car, except with different small features that differentiate them between each model. Fursuit makers literally do the same thing, as they're making uniform parts, assemble it together to make what they want. They have a basic foam structure, different muzzles, different brows, different cheeks, and whatever the customer wants, they can assemble several of them in one go. So they have spare parts, really, I like to think of fursuit heads as a unibody. Once it's kind of together, it's not coming apart. It's not body on frame, but that would be funny. So I think it'd be fun to make your own suit. Definitely be cheaper. Um, it's something I would like to do in the future. Who knows? I don't know about next year, at some point, though. I don't know. It really depends on my mood and finances. Though with looking for a job has been still difficult. There's not many good job openings that I'm willing to let go of this current job, regardless of how shit-tastic it actually is. There's nothing really that competes it well. Otherwise, there are jobs that I could be starting back at scratch, making $3-4 less an hour, and I don't feel like slaving for the amount of money back again. And there's still always a ceiling with some jobs. So yeah, but if I go live tomorrow, sure, yeah. If I can find your stream link, and if I happen to be available around that time, if I'm not making videos, then sure, I'd love to stop by and say hello. But I have made my own fursuit tail, so I already know how to cut fur, sew fur, whatnot. I've done my own fursuit repairs, but as a reenactor, you learn how to sew using resins, glue, sewing kit. So yeah, I would love to find a new job at some point, something that uses some of the talents that I've acquired over the years, or even learning something different. That'd be fun. It's just when all the jobs seem worse than what I'm doing right now, or even still pay-wise, I am willing to get the hell out of here as fast as I can, but I am not willing to step down even further than what I feel like I'm doing right now. So there is some take and give within a situation where I'm hell-bent to get out of this company, but if nothing really comes about in terms of something that would be a good prospect, I'm just probably better off staying put until things improve, which I don't like to say it, but it's starting to sound like that, where I'm better off waiting 6 to 8 months until the economy maybe perhaps improves. But with pandemic, who knows what that could actually mean? We don't know what's going to happen in 6 months or 8 months' time. Maybe different opportunity might happen. I don't know, but until then, I'm just going to sit pretty as best I can and just weather out my own personal employment storm that I have going on right now. And unless something plops right in front of me, that would be great. It's maybe something to get the foot in the door. All right. But until then, I'm just going to just be patient. And I'm a pretty patient person. I wasn't patient recently to maybe get the hell out of this company, but now seeing the job market is not what people say it is, which they say jobs are everywhere. And in fact, that was this past summer that people were talking about, where companies were rehiring their old employees and finding new ones along the way to replace others that they didn't want to bring back, which is unfair. But yeah, I'm still going to be hopeful. I'm not giving up, but may sit it back for a little while until, things improve, because right now nothing is for certain what can happen in the next 4, 6 months, 8 months. Who knows what's going to happen? My company is already bankrupt, so I already know that the floor can drop at any moment for me, which I'm excited for because this company is awful. However, if it does happen, I am then forced to do something about it. Would I want to do that? Do I want to quit on the spot? Not really. I would rather look for made for you suits are really, really handsome suits. If I didn't feel like making my own first suit, by the time I'm looking around for a new replacement, maybe Dustin 3.0 in the future, I probably would love to get a made for you suit, but who knows? That kind of depends on a lot of things, but yeah, we'll see. But uh, made for you is a good fursuit maker. They've really improved over the last 7-8 years, and would really highly recommend them. They do a few things different from each maker, but their suits look good. I've seen them in person, and yeah, they're just pretty good suits. A lot of people seem to be happy with them. So yeah, let's see what's going on in the. I am going to. There we go. So yeah, the idea, at least what I've understood with this past year, is that 2020 has taught me something, and it's to kind of shoot for the horizon. What can you do in your spare time? What is some things you can learn during this time? What are some things you could do differently or reinvent your own wheel? It's hard enough to reinvent the wheel, but sometimes it's nice to do a reset, which now I feel like I'm still the same person as I am right now, but I feel like I have turned back the time back to the earlier days um, when I was active in the fandom on a physical level, not the way you're thinking, but active in a way of, local community based stuff. Yeah, there was stuff to do, but it was quite small. Not much could happen. You're still looking at a small community. It's really nice to just relax for a change and not have to worry about doing everything, because eventually that wears you down. But it is fun to do different projects just to kind of keep your interests up, just to kind of do something different. And I've had this channel for, yes, it's pretty much like changing a timing belt in a car. It is nice to get one done because then you can feel a bit more relaxed and no blammo or bent valves and holes in your pistons, which is nail biting. Although, oddly enough, my grandmother's 2003 Cavalier, my 96, had a timing chain. It was cam and block, overhead valve. That was the old 2.2 liter back in the day. Now I'm talking about car stuff now. And my grandmother's 2003, the very last Cavalier in my family, because we had 5 of them, just because they're such prolific cars for us. I've got good memories of them, despite the amount of times I kept fixing the damn thing. They always never stranded me anywhere. They've always blew brake lines, but I still got home or went to work on no brakes because I'm insane. That, the Durotech, was it a Durotech? No, it was an Ecotech engine. It was a 2.2 Ecotech engine, which was a totally redesigned 2.2 liter engine. I don't even think it was the old 2.2 cam and block. It was a legit dual overhead cam timing belt. She went 125,000 miles on a timing belt and never changed it. It was the original belt. Me and her went to Holtz Chevrolet in Hales Corners, so Milwaukee area, and we went to get, her oil changed and whatnot, and they offered, hey, when was the last time you had your timing belt changed? It could use a replacement, and my grandma's like, oh, sure, why not? So when they changed it, we were in the showroom, and they came back and says, this is incredible. I've never seen this before. Your car has the original timing belt since 2003, And everyone from the service bay was looking at this Cavalier, which many mechanics hate. If it's one car you did not work, if you are a mechanic, was a Cavalier or a J-body. Sunfire, Sunbird, Cimarron, Skyhawk, Firenze, Cavalier. From any year from 1982 to 2005, the J-body platform is only assembled to be out the factory, but not to be fixed easily. So really a pain in the ass. For the first time, they've had people walk and gather around a Cavalier, which many people don't do, and said, oh, this car has the original timing belt. And I think this was 2014. So the car had done 125,000 miles on the original timing belt in 11 years, or 12 years, or was it 10 years? I forget when. This is still when I had my own Cavalier. So this is 2014 and prior. And they were all amazed that this timing belt did not snap. And the timing belt was actually in really good shape. So yeah, if your car's got a timing belt, you may want to get it changed every 60,000 miles. You don't really want to have a timing belt go on too long. When Yugos were still sold in the country in the 1980s and 90s, the Yugoslavian Yugo, the Serbian Fiat 127 Yugo, which shared no parts similarity between a Fiat 127 and a Yugo, that was somewhat unique. Although it did use Fiat 127 powertrain, but the body itself was uniquely Yugoslavian. And people would not maintain these cars because they were $4,000 brand new back in the day, and they just didn't bother with the maintenance. They said, you know what, it's a cheap enough car, it's disposable, there's no point. And what happened was timing belts would snap at 40,000 miles, which is oddly pretty short for timing belts. Normally, the average timing belt can last about 60,000 miles in most cars. And even still, they wouldn't snap. They just get aged, but they would not snap. You'd really have to really use the car up before the belt really snaps. Yugos, oddly enough, have short life expectancies for timing belts. Don't ask me why I know this. I just kind of know. And people always complain about how Yugos were really shit cars. Really, mechanically, they're just like Fiats. The body might, thicker gauge sheet steel for Yugoslavian winters, which you can only own one car in Yugoslavia. You may as well make it count. It's not that you couldn't own one car, you could only afford one car after you waited a while. Though Yugoslavia's car culture during the Eastern Bloc days is unique to itself. It was more market socialism with capitalism infused in it, where you could, if you had the money, could buy a brand new car as a Yugoslavian in 2 months' time without having to wait 10 years. Just that. In Hungary, oddly enough, you didn't have to wait 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11 years for a car. You could literally wait 6 months and you could get your car almost immediately, which for Eastern European, 6 months is lightning speed. But a Yugo would be a fun car just to kind of fuck around with. But people realize they're not shit cars. You just got to maintain them to any degree like any other car. Or like, for example, here. Let's talk about cars with service intervals. And I'm going to use a Chevy Citation brochure from 1984 as an example. And this is backwards. but this is service intervals. So the reason why cars from the 70s and 80s didn't last long is this shit in the brochure. Recommended service intervals to change your engine oil every 7,500 miles on non-conventional, straight, non-detergent oil. Normally, this oil is only good for 3,000 miles, but they're recommending it to be changed every 7,500 miles, not including brake and engine oil. It's just literally your first oil change in 7,500 miles, which at that point, your engine's already a ticking time bomb, because you really should change your oil brand new even before 2,000 miles, just to get all the metal loose filings floating around in the engine. You want to get rid of that as soon as you can. But of course, with operation of a brand new engine, transmission, whatnot, of course you're going to have to, the mechanics are going to have to move around, operate to loosen up more of these filings, so that by the time you do your first change, it's going to run so much more smoothly. However, GM thought you can get away with getting your oil changed every 7,500 miles, and you can see why a lot of these cars did not make it past 10 years. Is they were literally not maintained while being maintained. It's just insane. Or automatic transmission fluid to be changed every 100,000 miles, and for a GM car with a filter, it's 60,000 miles. Anything beyond that, you're just kind of frying your transmission. Asian imports, and I believe German cars too, but don't take my word for German cars. They don't have a filter, but you change them at every 30,000 miles. It's cheaper to do a Japanese, Korean car transmission flush at 30,000 miles because there's not much involved. However, you do it more frequently. And a domestic manufactured car, 60,000 miles with a filter. However, it's more expensive. It's actually double what you pay for ATF. Between domestic and import, yeah, you can go further with domestic, but you're paying more. But for the convenience of not doing it so often. Literally, domestic manufacturing did not care what the consumer thought, because the consumer was going to buy whatever car that they wanted, including this, which the Citation was not a bad car. It's just pretty much, okay, so I'm going to give you a crash course in GM manufacturing in the 1970s and the demise of the automotive domestic manufacturing as a whole. And it starts with the Chevy Vega. So before the Chevy Vega's development in 1969, every single 5 of GM's divisions, so that's Chevy, Pontiac, Buick, Olds, and Cadillac, they all had their own engineers. They did their own thing. They still had to share the same chassis, the same body-on-frame chassis as other divisions, but beyond that, powertrain was entirely unique to each division. So was their bodies. You cannot combine body parts and engine parts, powertrain, with other GM makes. But the basic parts can be swappable, but the major components aren't. Well, GM was trying to do something different, where the Chevy Vega was not designed by Chevrolet. It was, in fact, a GM engineering committee. So for the very first time, a Chevrolet was not a Chevrolet. It was just GM. That's why the Chevy Vega was really the first GM car to be totally badge engineered into another. The Pontiac Astra? Yeah. And it didn't require much panel changing. It was literally badges and a front end. That was it. That spelled the doom for GM right there. They also wanted to make a cheaper car. So they made thinner gauge sheet steel that was paper thin, that should not have been paper thin. They were trying to develop a car that was cheap to manufacture, so it was literally a tin can on 4 wheels. So not only the sheet steel was thin, but the way how they designed the car was also not that very well done. Mechanically, it still used, of course, General Motor powertrains. So you had a Chevy design 2.3 liter engine, which was aluminum block. Did not even have a steel cylinder sleeve. It was legit aluminum cylinder block that the steel piston rode in, which steel and aluminum do not mix when it's a moving piece, because eventually the aluminum wears out because steel is a harder metal compared to soft aluminum. GM thought, okay, well, we're going to put silica. We're going to do a silica coating on the cylinder walls to make it harder. So the aluminum has a fighting chance to resist the steel piston friction and just overall wear and tear, which worked. What doesn't help is that GM was starting to go with long service intervals, which with aging engine oil, which would eventually wear out, with piston rings, which actually the piston rings were also pretty shit too. Then wearing out piston rings would wear out the silica lining in the cylinders, which then wear out the cylinder walls, and you chug more oil, blow out head gaskets, because the cylinder head was actually steel. The block was aluminum, the head was steel, which nowadays, even back in the 80s and 90s, it was the opposite. You wanted a aluminum head with a steel block or an cast iron block. GM decided it was easier just to design an aluminum block with a steel head. It actually turned out to be a really bad idea. Not to say aluminum head, cylinder head with a cast iron block wouldn't be any better, but at least cast iron or cast aluminum head is a lot more easier for heat sinking. Eventually your head gaskets are going to go anyway, but it'll take a little longer and not so aggressive. The Chevy Vega is the reason why the Toyota Corolla is a successful car as it is now. Without the Chevy Vega, Japanese cars would still be seen as a curiosity. It's very possible that Japanese cars probably wouldn't be taken so seriously maybe for another decade, maybe another 15 years. It's just totally possible. If the Chevy Vega was designed by a Chevrolet division instead of just a GM committee. So you had body structure that was kind of meh. You get an engine that was also kind of meh. Quality control, because engineers put no faith in the car, so meh. And the people that built the cars at a Chevrolet plant also was meh, because it was not a car that their engineers didn't design. There was a lot of plant loyalty back then. So you got a shit box. The people bought the living hell out of them, which is why the Pinto, the Vega, these are all cars that were similar in development. Ford definitely developed the Pinto, but it was also done by a subcommittee as well that figured they knew it better than Ford engineers themselves. You go, Ben. You have a nice evening. But what manufacturers were thinking of is just to make a product that people are going to buy. And the American public at the time kind of accepted the terrible build quality of cars. Although the 60s, I like to think, was the pinnacle point of American automotive manufacturing. My Skylark is a good example of a well-built car. Yeah, it's rusty, but what older car isn't? And the beauty of it is it's a popular enough car that I can keep rebuilding as many times as I wanted to. So manufacturers did not believe a single word on, like, they thought that the average consumer is too dumb to care about how their car is made so as long as they look good in it. Even if it's broken down on the side of the road, as long as they just buy the car, okay. Well, cars like the Chevy Vega and the Ford Pinto was the perfect storm to arrive right as import invaders from other countries showing up at our shores at docks through ships. You're looking at Subaru, you're looking at Datsun, you're looking at Toyota. These are early importers that were importing cars that were just as well built as domestic manufacturing at that time, but yeah, they may not have been built as nicely as a low-rung Chevrolet, but mechanically they were simple, they were more durable, they actually lasted a long time. Yeah, they still rotted away as fast as anything on the road at this time, but mechanically there was nothing wrong with them. That was the big trade-off. Yeah, you didn't want to buy a Japanese job, that's what they called them back then, but they realized you can save more fuel and not have to spend so much money in terms of maintenance or just repairs. Most cases, the cars still rotted away long before it needed an overhaul. So mechanically, Toyotas just lasted forever until the bodies rotted out. But the 1973 oil crisis really told Americans the love affair of the giant boat was dying. People were now turning to the Chevy Vega out of spite to say, well, these aren't okay cars, but they're all right for what they are. I'll buy one just because I need one because fuel economy. And you know what? They sold over 300,000 Chevy Vegas each year. Actually, for many years, they sold more than 400,000 for a time between 72 and 75. So they were already nearing more than 1 million units sold within about 3-4 years' time. And the Chevy Vega was made between 71 and 77. So why did people put up with that? Buying really terrible quality cars? Well, because they still believed in American manufacturing. They figured they'd want to buy something domestic to support whatever patriotic duties that they would think. But manufacturers started to realize that build quality and good engineering is something they have to consider now, especially with vehicle safety in the 1970s, where crumple zones were becoming more of a new thing by the end of the 70s. Believe it or not, this car was built with crumple zones in 1979. So these are still safe cars. You can get into an accident with them to a good degree and walk out just fine if you're at 35 miles an hour and slower. Anything higher than that, even with a modern car, you're less likely to survive. However, cars like the Vega that rusted away so fast that it didn't really matter in repairing it, you were better off buying a new one every 2 years. Ford Pinto had a similar problem in terms of rust, but it was morally bad engineering. And one of them is what the Taco has mentioned: exploding when you rear end a Pinto. The reason why this is that the Pinto has, oddly enough, a fuel tank that is so close to the rear of the car that even from driving behind a Pinto, which I've done at least once, when one guy was driving a Pinto as a daily vehicle, you can see the tank plain as day beneath the car. It's that scary because it's just right there. And what would happen is it's literally the spark between metal clashing together. The tank, it was close enough to the rear of the car because the rear axle took up the space, but the fuel tank location was not considered until the 11th month of development for the Pinto. You would think that'd be something part of the earlier months of organs of a car. Your powertrain, so axle, transmission, engine, drive shaft, all this stuff matters. But all the other smaller organs, so you got your radiator, your fuel tank, that also matters. But they didn't think about the fuel tank until late into development. By the time that a body was already set in stone, they were making metal stampings for them, they were still on the fence where to put the fuel tank. And the only place where they could put it at that time was at the back of the car, where any rear-wheel drive car, the tank is always in the back of the car anyway, but it's so far close to the end of the car that in a rear-end collision would crush the tank, fuel would leak out, and if there's any spark from any electrical wires or sparks from metal clashing at high enough speeds that create a spark, one spark is enough to set one on fire. The Pinto also has a really bad tendency of having the rear live axle. So you have a tube. You have your tires right here. You have a tube, and you got your differential housing. The little tiny shafts inside each tube connects to the differential gear. Pintos are really well known of this small little shaft that spins the rear wheel, likes to work its way out, and you will see your tire like literally moving away from the body line of the car until it's literally just hanging off just by the tube itself. So again, another reason why people bought Japanese cars, they didn't do that. Toyotas do not explode. Why would you buy a Ford Pinto and risk yourself getting into a Fury crash when you could buy a Datsun B210 or a Toyota Corona or a Corolla or a Crown or a Datsun 510 sedan or a coupe, which are really good cars, good for racing. So makers didn't really consider anything about a car as far as its engineering. So as long as it was sound, they made it. But consumer reports really became a huge thing in the 1970s. That's when Americans got fed up with buying garbage. So manufacturers got better. From 1975 till 1977, Chevy Vegas became incredibly reliable and lasted a lot longer, which is why a lot of them tend to be the later years. Ford Pintos definitely got better, but you could add a friction plate beneath the tank so that when you get rear-ended, the rear of the car is going to deflect on top of the hood and not fully crush the tank, causing fire. But Ford only did that to cars that people got a recall. Like, they got a recall letter, they went to a dealership, and they got it fixed. It was not mandatory. Ford never made it mandatory. So there's a lot of Pintos that are still out there that don't have a deflection plate, which is nuts. And then General Motors made this little number called an X-body platform. Citation, Buick Skylark, Pontiac Phoenix, and Oldsmobile Omega are all part of what you call an X-body platform. And you know what? GM's very first front-wheel drive platform was a raging success. However, since the Vega, GM has only been making corporate design that could be organically swappable between brands. So really only front end and rear end styling was changed. Besides that, the rest of the car was practically the same. So was X-Body. Same car for all four manufacturers, just different front ends, different rear end taillight treatment. There we go. Maybe different interior designs. You're set. So these cars suffered from poor body weld construction. So body welds weren't fully done. To bad power steering. Hydraulic hoses, so you lose power steering. Brake boosters would fail. So you didn't lose brakes. Although some cars did lose braking altogether. Brake linings for front pads would wear out too soon. Rear drum brakes would stop working or leak altogether. And electronics just either never worked from the factory or eventually stopped working within a year's ownership of any of these cars in the beginning. And there's a little bit of a myth surrounding how the Toyota Camry came into being. In 1981, the Toyota Corporation bought, I'm showing this brochure a lot, bought a 5-door Citation from a Chevrolet dealership in California, sent it to Japan, and Toyota engineers disassembled an entire car just to see why it was America's most popular selling car of 1979 for the 1980 model year. They could not understand why. Because when they disassembled the car, they realized all the wrong things to do for a car. Then Toyota designed the front-wheel drive Toyota Camry. They literally looked at a GM X-Body and did all the things that they did wrong, they did right. And you can understand why the Toyota Camry is one of the best-selling mid-size cars in the United States. It's because GM literally gave them all the blueprints to make a front-wheel drive car and all the good reasons not to make a front-wheel drive car and a car in general. They literally learned from their competitors' mistakes that they didn't realize, and they made a successful model afterwards. So, yeah, manufacturing gets stupid. And it's not until it's not until they're really late in the game to realize, hey, we have mistakes, let's fix them. By 1982, GM already fixed the X-Body and all its mistakes. By that point, people are so fed up with them. The damage was already done. The public were already buying other products. So their J-bodies, A-bodies, or the front-wheel drive A-bodies. I'm a nerd. Pretty much every front-wheel drive GM car has a bit of X-body genetics in it in some way, shape, or form. Even my 96 Cavalier has quite a lot in common with a 1980 X-body, which explained a lot. Actually, really explains a lot. So, yeah, domestic manufacturing. How are they able to get away with so much bullshit? It's because they could, until the buying public said, no, make better stuff or we're not going to buy your cars. And now we've got the consumer base that we have today is people who are going to be incredibly picky about the car they bought. And manufacturers are going to do their best to make sure that everyone is happy, which is how it should be. Because I refuse to buy a $15,000 car and have it not work, or built so shoddily that I'm not impressed and have no confidence in buying another. Corporations want you to keep buying their stuff. So they're going to find every way they could to make sure that they can. You're still giving them their money or dealership or whatever, but if they can secure your loyalty to a company, they're going to make sure they're going to do their damn best that their cars are well designed and last well enough to where that they can get your trust into buying their products. The Chevy Vega was the very first nail in the domestic coffin of American manufacturing for motor vehicles, that suddenly things aren't all rosy what they thought it would be. And even to this day, it's felt almost immediately to this day. General Motors has been shrinking since 1971 as far as popularity. Yeah, their market share reached 58%, which for monopolies and the IRS and whatnot and business bureaus, a company in the United States will get broken up if they reach 60% market share of any industry. They'll do a monopoly bust to split up companies to make sure that no company has that much power in a market. And General Motors was trying its best to stare down that finger by saying, no, we're going to do what the hell we want, and we're going to do it anyway, reaching 58% of the automotive market in the United States, which is nuts. And they're the only ones that have ever done it. So my nose itches, and I don't know why. Oh, I'm a nerd, but that's okay. Nerd. Is 10:51. Look at that. Let's see. How are my other videos? Finished processing. I'm going to get this one video set up. And I'm going to make this video for February 15th of 2021. And I just scheduled it. I am already ahead of the game, at least my own game. Yeah, I'm a total nerd of all stuff, most stuff really. So history nerd, car nerd, photography nerd, but I guess this is just all stuff that I enjoy. Take care, Taco, and we'll catch you next time. In fact, I'm probably going to probably cut this at 2 hours length anyway. Maybe the length I'll do these streams. It's maybe 2 hours long. Maybe 3 if it's early in the day and I like to bore you guys with stuff, but I think either 1, 2, or 3 hour streams is probably what I'm probably willing to do anyway. So yeah, actually, this has been really fun for a first stream. Definitely reminds me of the old Tiny Chat days. I mean, Skype was fun. I have a Discord, but I don't know how to really use it all that much, but who knows, I might maybe play with Discord in time. Yeah, we'll see. But I'll probably still use YouTube streaming for the time being, so yeah. Anyway, I appreciate everyone turning out tonight. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Night.